Welcome to Summary Central. You're listening to Summary Central, where big ideas become calm, useful conversations you can slip into your day. This is your 15-minute summary of The Psychology of Money by Morgan Housel. Why wealth is more about behavior than brilliance. Money makes smart people do dumb things. Morgan Housel's whole argument starts there. He says doing well with money isn't about IQ or formulas. It's about how you behave when the world stops making sense. Think of two men. One, a tech hotshot throwing gold coins into the Pacific just because he can. The other, Ronald Reed, a janitor who quietly saved tiny amounts and died with over $8 million in the bank. The difference isn't intelligence, it's temperament. Finance pretends to be physics. Plug data into a formula, get an answer. But money's closer to psychology. Messy, emotional, full of fear, pride, and insecurity. That's why the smartest investors in history often say the same boring things. Save, wait, and don't lose your mind. How our stories shape our money. Everyone builds their financial worldview from personal experience, not statistics. Someone raised during hyperinflation clings to cash like oxygen. Someone raised during tech booms sees risk as a joke. Each believes they're being rational. They're just reacting to the tiny slice of history they live through. Your money brain forms from your environment, parents, decade of birth, and a few emotional scars. That's why two equally smart people can completely disagree about investing. It's not intelligence, it's perspective. The problem? Your experience is 0.00000001% of what's happened in the world, but it shapes 80% of how you think the world works. That's why no one's crazy. We're just biased in different directions. We also forget how new modern money is. Credit cards, 401ks, index funds, barely middle-aged inventions. Most of humanity has been learning to invest for less than 2 generations. We're basically toddlers with brokerage accounts, so go easy on yourself when you mess up. Luck, risk, and the myth of control. Housel brings humility crashing through the door with the story of Bill Gates. He attended one of the only high schools on Earth that had a computer in 1968. That 1 in a million coincidence helped create Microsoft. Equally brilliant classmate Kent Evans died young in an accident. Same skill, same ambition, opposite outcomes. Luck and risk, two sides of the same coin. When you win, luck played a role. When you fail, risk showed up first. Understanding that balance keeps ego and self-blame in check. Every investor, every entrepreneur, every success story sits on a pile of randomness. For every Jeff Bezos, there's 1,000 equally talented founders who timed the market wrong, had the wrong partners, or got hit by events beyond their control. The point isn't cynicism, it's compassion. Stop worshiping success as pure merit, and stop dismissing failure as stupidity. Both are messy combinations of skill and circumstance, when more becomes a trap. Rajat Gupta had everything. CEO of McKinsey, global influence, $100 million net worth. He could have coasted. Instead, he risked insider trading to join the Billionaires Club and lost everything. Bernie Madoff did the same, just with a longer fuse. The disease here isn't greed, it's goalpost drift. You hit one milestone, then immediately chase another. Modern capitalism feeds it. We compare upward forever. As Housel writes, happiness is results minus expectations. If your expectations rise faster than your results, you'll never feel rich. The fix is radical simplicity. Know what enough looks like. Enough doesn't mean complacency. It means peace. If you risk what you have for what you don't need, you're gambling your freedom for decoration. Want to win the game? Stop playing the infinite version where satisfaction never arrives. the real power of compounding. Everyone knows about compound interest. Almost no one respects it because compounding looks boring until it isn't. Warren Buffett's genius isn't 22% annual returns. It's that he's been earning them since age 10. If he'd started at 30 and quit at 60, he'd be worth about $11 million, not $80 billion. Time packs talent. The math of compounding is invisible because human intuition is linear. We understand addition, not exponentials. So we chase quick wins and ignore the slow burn that actually builds fortunes. The trick is to stay in the game long enough for compounding to flex its muscles. That means fewer blow-ups, fewer emotional decisions, more boredom. As Housel jokes, the best investing book could be one page titled, "Shut Up and Wait." Getting rich versus staying rich. Getting rich takes optimism, believing things will work. Staying rich takes paranoia, knowing they might not. Jesse Livermore made billions shorting the 1929 crash, then lost it all later because he forgot humility. Survival is underrated. You don't have to crush the market. You just have to avoid catastrophe. That means expect volatility, keep a margin of safety, never assume the future owes you anything. We celebrate boldness, but financial success is mostly about staying alive long enough for luck and compounding to meet. The tail effect, why outliers run the world. Most of progress comes from a handful of extreme wins. In venture capital, 90% of returns come from 10% of deals. In investing, a few monster years create lifetime gains. In your own life, a handful of decisions, career moves, relationships, habits will outweigh everything else. That's the tail effect. You don't need every bet to work, you just need the right few to stick. So stop obsessing over being right all the time. You'll fail often. You're supposed to. As long as you stay solvent and curious, the tails will find you. This idea releases enormous pressure. You can experiment, learn, and occasionally swing big, because one hit can erase a trail of misses. That's how innovation, investing, and even personal growth actually function. 1,000 small tries, a few home runs, endless learning. Freedom, the real dividend of wealth. What people really want isn't a number, it's control. Freedom to wake up when you want. Freedom to decline meetings. Freedom to do work that excites you instead of work that drains you. Money's ultimate reward isn't luxury, it's autonomy. Every dollar saved buys a tiny piece of your time back from obligation. A billionaire chained to meetings isn't free. A teacher with no debt and a flexible summer is. Before chasing more income, ask, will this give me more control or just more clutter? If it's clutter, it's not wealth, it's another leash. What wealth really looks like. You can't see real wealth. You can only see spending. That car, that house, that watch, they're symbols of money that's gone. True wealth is the stuff left unseen. Savings, options, calm. Spending to signal wealth is like lighting cash on fire to prove you have a lighter. It works for 5 seconds, then you're broke and smoky. Housel's definition is perfect. Spending money to show people how much money you have is the fastest way to have less money. So next time you see a flashy display, remember, the quieter someone's lifestyle, the louder their balance sheet probably is. The man in the car paradox. We think a fancy car earns admiration. In reality, people look at the car and imagine themselves driving it. They're not thinking, wow, that driver's amazing. They're thinking, wow, I'd look amazing in that. That's the paradox. You can't buy respect. Status symbols don't broadcast your worth, they reveal your insecurities. Real confidence is invisible because it doesn't need applause. And the fewer people you're trying to impress, the richer you actually feel. Reason beats rationality. Human behavior rarely fits into a spreadsheet. A mathematically perfect decision that keeps you anxious isn't perfect, it's torture. Reasonable choices last longer than rational ones because they align with your emotions. If keeping cash or paying off a small loan helps you sleep, it's the right move for you. The goal isn't theoretical optimization, it's psychological sustainability. Being reasonable keeps you consistent. Consistency keeps you compounding. Compounding keeps you wealthy. That's the hidden loop behind every calm investor you've ever met. If this first half is clicking with you, stick around. In the next section, we'll dive into resilience, changing goals, the emotional cost of wealth, and how to stay sane when the world loses its mind. And hey, if you're enjoying the breakdown so far, hit like or share it with that one friend who treats investing like roulette. Why certainty is an illusion. If the past few decades have proven anything, it's this. Nobody has a clue what's coming next. Not the economists, not the analysts, not even the people paid 7 figures to pretend they do. Every big financial moment in history, the housing crash, the dot-com bubble, cryptomania, pandemics, blindsided most of the experts. The future is always a surprise party we pretend we planned. That's why Housel says the most useful financial skill isn't forecasting, it's flexibility. If you build a life that can survive being wrong, you never have to be perfectly right. People who survive uncertainty understand that I don't know is not weakness, it's wisdom. They plan not by predicting the storm, but by carrying an umbrella every day just in case. The role of room for error. The best investors aren't thrill seekers, they're survivalists. They don't ask, how can I get the highest return? They ask, how can I stay in the game long enough for returns to matter? Room for error is what separates dreamers from doers. It's why a safety margin in engineering, backup power in hospitals, and cash reserves in business all exist. Because reality doesn't care about your spreadsheet. Having cash on hand, low fixed costs, or just the humility to admit things might go sideways is a sign of maturity, not fear. The people who mock caution are usually the ones borrowing optimism on credit. When markets drop or life implodes, the paranoid survive and the overconfident vanish. So give yourself slack, not because you're pessimistic, but because you're human. The price tag nobody talks about. Everything has a cost, especially wealth. But most prices don't come printed on receipts. High returns come with emotional tolls, stress, volatility, uncertainty. There's no such thing as a risk-free profit, only delayed anxiety. When the market dips 30%, that's not failure. That's the fee for being in the game. If you can't handle the fee, you'll never earn the reward. Housel's analogy is perfect. People leave the theater when the movie gets tense and then complain they missed the ending. That's what panic selling is. The people who actually get wealthy aren't fearless, they're just willing to pay the emotional cost everyone else avoids. It's not about loving risk, it's about respecting it. The quiet power of endurance. Patience looks dull, right until it looks brilliant. The biggest fortunes on earth belong to people who simply waited longer than everyone else. The trick is not intelligence, it's durability. You can mess up, miss trends, and still win if you stay consistent for decades. Compounding rewards the stubbornly calm. It doesn't reward those chasing the next shiny thing. If someone tells you time in the market beats timing the market, it's not motivational fluff, it's statistical reality. The line between a wise investor and a lucky survivor is often just endurance disguised as virtue. How to think about change. We make financial plans as if our future selves will care about the same things forever. But 10 years ago, you probably thought cargo shorts were a good idea. We change. Goals, fears, values, yet we build rigid systems as if we won't. Housel calls it the illusion of permanence. It's the reason people chase careers or lifestyles that no longer fit, simply because that was the plan. The antidote? Flexibility. Save for possibilities, not predictions. Build a strategy that bends instead of breaks. Your future self will thank you for leaving room to evolve. Adaptation is intelligence in disguise. Why reason beats precision. The most dangerous words in finance are according to my model. Models are clean, reality is muddy. You don't have to be precisely right, you just have to be directionally reasonable. A plan that survives bad days beats one that only works in perfect weather. That's why reasonable behavior, saving regularly, staying diversified, sleeping well, outperforms genius strategies that require robotic discipline. Money is emotional, and emotions don't care about math. Being kind of right for decades beats being perfectly right for 6 months. The psychology of freedom. Freedom is underrated because it doesn't photograph well. Luxury cars look great on Instagram. Free mornings don't. Yet freedom is what most people actually want when they chase wealth. Not yachts. Autonomy. The power to say no, to choose how to spend your time, to avoid doing things just to impress strangers. Housel argues that money is just stored potential energy. You can spend it to buy comfort, but the highest return is buying control over your own calendar. A quiet life with choices beats a loud one full of obligations. Ask yourself regularly, would I trade this purchase for more control over my time? If the answer is yes, you already know what real wealth feels like. The man in the car illusion. We assume rich people buy status to be admired, but nobody actually admires the person, just the position. See a stranger in a Lamborghini? You don't think, what a fascinating, disciplined human. You think, I'd look incredible in that car. So when you spend to impress others, you're not buying admiration, you're feeding daydreams that never include you. It's not wrong to enjoy nice things. It's foolish to expect them to fill emotional gaps. Real respect is earned through character, not consumption. Every dollar spent to show off is a dollar that could have quietly bought freedom instead. Why pessimism sounds smarter. If you've noticed, doom sells. People who say everything's about to crash get retweeted more than those who say, we'll probably be fine. That's because pessimism sounds like intelligence. It feels safe. Optimism, meanwhile, feels naive. But history disagrees. Yes, things fall apart constantly. Recessions, wars, scandals. But the long arc of progress always bends upward. The world gets messy, then better, then messy again. Housel's definition of optimism isn't everything will be great. It's things will be hard, but we'll figure them out. Optimists survive because they adapt. Pessimists freeze because they expect perfection. In investing and in life, the optimistic realist wins by simply refusing to give up. How stories hijack our decisions. When markets boom, we tell ourselves we're geniuses. When they crash, we swear the system's rigged. Both reactions are stories, emotional coping mechanisms. Humans don't crave truth, we crave comfort. We believe whatever narrative helps us sleep at night, even if it's nonsense. That's why bubbles form and scams thrive, because confidence feels safer than uncertainty. And the more money is involved, the more desperate we become for certainty. If someone sells you a sure thing, the surest thing is that they're selling you something. What really matters? At the end of all this, Housel circles back to simplicity. Money only works if it helps you do 3 things: sleep peacefully, have choices, avoid regret. That's it. Everything else, beating the market, getting rich fast, chasing the next trend, is ego dressed as ambition. The people who actually stay rich are the ones who define wealth as contentment, not accumulation. They save, not because they're scared, but because they enjoy the calm that comes from being prepared. They live below their means, not to appear humble, but because it buys independence. And they remember that enough is a milestone, not a moving target. If this second half is connecting with you, hit that like button or share it with someone you know who's always stressing about what's next. The final part ties all of this together. What to actually do with these ideas and why humility is the secret ingredient of lasting wealth. Everyone's playing a different game. One of Housel's sharpest insights: most financial arguments happen because people are playing different games without realizing it. A day trader buying options for 48-hour flips, a long-term investor holding index funds, and a retiree living off bonds, all looking at the same stock chart, reacting differently, and thinking the other two are idiots. They're not wrong, they're just in different arenas. It's like a marathon runner laughing at a sprinter's pace. They're both athletes, just with different goals. The big mistake? Copying someone else's strategy when their time horizon, risk tolerance, and definition of winning have nothing to do with yours. So the next time someone says, you should buy this, you should sell that, ask, are we even playing the same game? If not, their advice is background noise, not a roadmap. Wealth isn't a competition. It's a solo sport with your future self as the opponent. The only scoreboard that matters is whether you're getting closer to freedom or farther from it. The mirage of smart money. People love the idea that someone out there, some hedge fund manager, some AI model, some mysterious smart money, knows what's going to happen next. Spoiler, they don't. Even the most successful investors in history are wrong a lot. Buffett has missed entire tech revolutions. Dalio's been blindsided by macro shifts. Yet, they're still fine because they never bet the farm. You don't have to be brilliant, you just have to avoid ruin. The entire point of risk management is survival, not perfection. There's a quiet freedom in admitting you'll never time things perfectly. Once you stop pretending you can predict chaos, you start designing a life that doesn't collapse when you're wrong. It's not about being clever, it's about being durable. Why slow money wins? We live in a world allergic to patience. Everyone wants exponential results by Thursday, but finance rewards the opposite temperament: calm, consistent, unsexy patience. The best investors look boring, same strategy, same schedule, zero drama. They understand that wealth isn't about chasing excitement, it's about managing boredom. If you want adrenaline, go skydiving. If you want compounding, learn to love stillness. As Housel writes, the trick is staying in the game long enough for time to do the heavy lifting. It's not glamorous, but the results are. Learning to live with uncertainty. The market is unpredictable because people are unpredictable, and people run the market. Emotions, fads, fear, greed, these things drive cycles, not logic. So instead of trying to outguess chaos, build a system that thrives within it. Save more than you think you should. Assume your plans will break. Diversify like you don't trust yourself. Because one day you'll be wrong. And that's fine if you've planned for it. Financial peace isn't knowing what's next. It's knowing you'll be okay no matter what's next. The emotional cost of wealth. People talk about making money, but not about how exhausting it can be to keep it. Once you have something to lose, you start seeing ghosts, new risks, new worries, new anxieties. The stress doesn't disappear with wealth, it just changes shape. That's why Housel keeps coming back to humility. The second you believe you've figured it out, the universe reminds you that you haven't. Every empire, company, and investor who thought they were invincible eventually learned the same lesson. Pride is a margin call on your soul. So instead of chasing invulnerability, chase balance, the mental space to enjoy what you have without obsessing over what's next. The beauty of modest expectations. You don't need astronomical returns to become wealthy. You just need reasonable returns sustained for an unreasonably long time. 10% gains over 40 years beats 100% gains that blow up next week. Consistency compounds. Extremes implode. The secret isn't high performance, it's low ego. When you set modest expectations, you reduce stress and increase odds of success. That calm headspace lets you make better decisions, which ironically improves your results even more. It's a loop most people never experience because they're too busy chasing the impossible. Why simplicity scales? We love complexity because it feels sophisticated. But the best investors and the happiest people live by painfully simple rules. Save money consistently. Live below your means. Invest broadly. Don't panic. Be patient. That's it. It's so simple it sounds like an insult, but it works because it's human proof. It doesn't rely on predicting moods or timing markets. Every extra layer of complexity adds friction and fragility. Every layer you remove adds clarity and peace. Complex strategies might look smarter, but simplicity compounds faster and stress-free. Luck, risk, and the humility to say I don't know. Humility is the rarest and most valuable financial skill. It's easy to say, I earned this. It's harder to admit, I got lucky too. But humility keeps you grounded. It stops you from over-leveraging. It reminds you that what luck gives, risk can take back. When you're humble, you plan for uncertainty instead of trying to eliminate it. You diversify. You save more than you need. You forgive mistakes, yours and others. Arrogance builds skyscrapers. Humility builds foundations. Only one survives earthquakes. Defining wealth for yourself. One of the book's most freeing insights. You don't have to want what everyone else wants. We live surrounded by social comparison, luxury influencers, financial gurus, and endless rich lists. But the moment you adopt someone else's definition of success, you lose control of your own. Maybe for you, wealth is working 4 days a week, or being debt-free, or never missing your kids' soccer games, or retiring at 50 to write novels in a cabin. Whatever it is, own it. Because money only works if it supports your values, not the world's applause. The seduction of simplicity. At some point, you realize the goal isn't to maximize returns, it's to minimize regret, to have enough money to do what you want, and enough humility to know when to stop. People overcomplicate wealth because they think simple means unsophisticated. But simplicity is elegance. It's clarity. It's the absence of noise. The happiest wealthy people aren't chasing more, they're curating less. Less stress, less obligation, less noise in exchange for more time, health, and peace. That's the game behind the game. And most people never realize they're allowed to play it. The philosophy of enough. Housel's most recurring idea is deceptively simple. Define enough, or you'll never feel it. Enough means peace without paralysis, ambition without greed, comfort without complacency. It's the invisible line where growth turns into gluttony. Without that line, every victory becomes a new starting point for dissatisfaction. You'll run forever and never arrive. People chase wealth thinking it'll bring satisfaction, but it only expands their appetite. Learning to stop, to breathe, and say, "This is good," is an act of quiet rebellion in a culture addicted to more. The ultimate freedom, time. At the heart of it all, wealth boils down to one thing: time. Money is stored energy. Spend it right, and it buys back the hours you'd otherwise sell. Every dollar saved is a future hour of freedom. The rich aren't rich because they have stuff. They're rich because they have choices to work, rest, create, or do nothing on their own schedule. Housel argues that controlling your time is the highest dividend money pays. Everything else, status, luxury, admiration, is noise compared to that. So the real question isn't how much do I have, but how much of my day is truly mine? Bringing it all together. If there's a single takeaway from the psychology of money, it's that the game isn't about beating markets. It's about mastering yourself. Behavior, knowledge, patience, intelligence, consistency, brilliance. The goal isn't perfection, it's endurance. To save a little more, risk a little less, worry a little less, and stay in the game a little longer than everyone else. The irony? Those who treat wealth as a byproduct of good behavior tend to end up with more of it than those who treat it as the goal. The confession that changes everything. Housel ends the book with an admission. Even he doesn't have it all figured out. His strategy is intentionally simple. Save aggressively, invest broadly, ignore noise, live well below his means. Not because it's mathematically optimal, but because it lets him sleep. That's his real metric, peace per dollar. His approach isn't the best, it's just sustainable. And that's the real secret. The best financial plan isn't the one that looks smartest on paper. It's the one you'll actually stick to through fear, boredom, and chaos. And if that plan buys you calm, time, and contentment, you've already won. The psychology of enough. When you strip it all down, this book isn't about money. It's about human behavior, our tendency to want, compare, fear, and hope. Wealth is quiet. Greed is loud. Freedom is subtle. Envy is exhausting. You don't need to beat the system. You just need to stop sabotaging yourself. Save consistently. Define enough. Respect luck and risk. Stay humble. Then let time, the only real multiplier, do its work. In Housel's words, doing well with money isn't about what you know. It's about how you behave. That's the line to remember. Because once you master your behavior, the rest takes care of itself. If this summary helped you see money differently, hit like and share it. It might just help someone finally stop chasing more and start chasing enough. And if you're new here, subscribe. We unpack big ideas that make life a little saner.